Number 10. The Doomed Marriage. In September 2016, a woman was discovered dead after having her throat slit open by her stepdaughter and her boyfriend. 52-year-old Rhonda Oakley lived in Danville, Kentucky, and was a single mother of 4 until she met her second husband, Philip Oakley. After deciding to get married, she became a stepmother to his children, 15-year-old Jenna Oakley and 13-year-old David Oakley. Initially, they had been living with their biological mom in Indiana, but they moved to Kentucky in April 2016 to live with their dad and Rhonda. But on September 1st of that year, David got dropped off early by his school bus at 1 p.m. When he went down into the basement at home, he found the lifeless body of Rhonda lying still on the ground. Rushing to his neighbor's house, he called 911 immediately, and as the first responders got to the scene, they saw that the woman had multiple lacerations around her neck. As they searched the home, they spotted a trash can full of vomit and a missing knife in the kitchen upstairs. There was no evidence pointing toward a break-in robbery, but Rhonda's white sedan was missing from her driveway. Around the same time, Philip reported to the police that his daughter Jenna was missing as well. She had actually skipped school that day, and her sudden disappearance led to a few theories. A lengthy search into her diary revealed her wish to kill her family. Surveillance footage was also discovered near the crime scene. It showed Jenna and her 20-year-old boyfriend, Kenneth Nye, who the parents didn't approve of. Authorities went after the two and through their device location found them hiding in Tucumcari, New Mexico. They were sleeping inside the white sedan they stole from Rhonda, and after they were taken into custody, both of them confessed to Oakley's murder. Jenna and her stepmom had apparently only gotten into an argument, and it quickly turned physical as the stepdaughter tried to choke Rhonda. Then Nye came out of hiding from the basement. He put Rhonda in a chokehold until she passed out, before dragging her to the bedroom and stabbing her multiple times in the neck till she was dead. Jenna was charged with first-degree murder and given a light sentence of 10 years in prison, though she was ordered to serve 5 more years for stealing Rhonda's car. Nye died shortly after his arrest due to the injuries he sustained after trying to take his life in the Mexico detention center. Number 9. A Stepfather's Rage. On January 23, 2023, a young boy was killed in a Bronx apartment after being strangled by his stepdad. According to the police, 28-year-old Tyrese Minter and his 15-year-old stepson, Cordy Scott, got into an argument. On the night of the boy's death, the neighbors reported to the local station News 12 that they heard loud noises coming from the West Chester Square apartment where Cordy used to live, and after a while, the noise went silent. Oddly enough, locals claimed that it was the first time they had seen the stepfather at the residence. When the teen was found about an hour after the attack, he had severe trauma and wounds on his neck. The boy was rushed to New York Health Plus Hospital, where he was declared dead immediately after arriving. According to the district attorney's office, the culprit locked his stepson in a chokehold and prevented the boy from breathing. Minter then held Scott still by wrapping his legs around him until he passed out, and eventually the teen died on the spot. Additionally, Minter decided not to call 911 after about 20 minutes of his stepson going in and out of consciousness. When questioned by police officers, Minter claimed the teenager had been very aggressive and started screaming after he got back from school, and at one point charged Minter with a weapon. According to his testimony, he wrestled Scott to the ground out of self-defense. He was charged with murder in January, as well as for manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide in March. According to the prosecution, when he made an appearance in the Bronx Criminal Court before Judge Naita Semaj, she ordered his release on his recognizance, despite the district attorney's request that he stay detained until trial. So he was controversially freed without bail and is now scheduled to return to court on June 20th. Number 8. Cry for help. In November 2010, a woman sexually assaulted and killed her infant stepdaughter because she went to the bathroom in her pants during a temper tantrum. 28-year-old Renee King of Macomb County in Michigan was convicted of murdering 2-year-old Lily Furno Wolfenbarger in her father's trailer home in New Haven. According to the police, when 29-year-old Jeffrey Wolfenbarger left for work, he asked King to take care of Lily. He and King were married at the time. Later in the morning, King called 911 to report that Lily was not breathing, and according to the authorities, she provided them with contradictory accounts of what happened. Finally, after the autopsy, it was discovered that Lily was killed from blunt force injuries to the head, and there were also signs of sexual assault as well. Her body was smashed against the floor over and over, and according to the medical reports, the trauma was the same intensity someone would experience in a violent car crash. Just a few days before the murder, on November 20th, Lily's biological mom, Lauren Furno, brought her daughter to her dad since Jeffrey had joint custody of their child, but that was the last time she would ever see her baby alive. Despite all the evidence against King, she denied all wrongdoing, stating that the trauma came from 2 accidental falls. On April 9th, 2012, it only took the jury 2 hours to come to a conclusion. The suspect was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her stepdaughter. She got an additional 50 years on the charge of first-degree criminal sexual behavior and as much as 15 years for first-degree child abuse. Number 7. Strange coincidence. On March 2nd, 2015, a freshman from Longwood University in Virginia went missing, only for her lifeless body to be discovered a month later, left to rot in a ditch by her stepfather. 18-year-old Angelica A.J. Hartzell's body was discovered by a piece of plywood next to an abandoned home in Franklin, which was located about 40 miles away from Norfolk. According to a medical examiner, she was restrained and given an injection of 3 times the lethal amount of heroin. She died from both homicidal violence and acute poisoning. The defense tried to imply that Angelica's death was suicidal. Her social media accounts showed that she was upset after a breakup, and they suggested the possibility that she killed herself by overdosing on migraine medicine. The victim's attorney said that the nortriptyline prescription medicine was never spotted in her system by the medical examiner. It turned out that she had never used drugs before. With this evidence, the defense's suicide theory was rejected by the prosecution as absurd. 2 weeks after Angelica's disappearance, her 43-year-old stepfather, Wesley Hadsell, was arrested on unrelated charges of breaking into a house, which he said he only did while desperately looking for his stepdaughter. At the time, Hadsell was acting innocent. He claimed that he couldn't sit peacefully while not knowing where his daughter was. But seeing how he had a lengthy criminal record behind him, no one bought the act. Still, he wasn't charged for his stepdaughter's death until November 2018. The case against Wesley was based on the satellite tracking of their phones the day she vanished and the GPS information from his work truck, which helped authorities find the victim's body. The reason for the homicide was never uncovered, but in February 2022, Wesley was found guilty of first-degree murder and concealing a body in the death of Angelica. The man was sentenced to life in prison. Do you think this was a fair conclusion? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 6. Dirty Alliance. In March 2020, a couple was shot and killed in their sleep by a Florida man who used his stepdaughter's boyfriend to help cover it up. According to the Polack County Sheriff's Office, 34-year-old Todd Michael Jackson was arrested near his Lakeland residence on 2 counts of first-degree murder. The victims were 37-year-old Crystal Ann Klein and 33-year-old Raymond Mark Klein. The couple was found dead in a marshy area behind their home a day before Jackson's arrest, and authorities say they weren't sure how long the bodies were there before being discovered. Nobody had seen either of them since February 21st. It was revealed during a news conference that Jackson was believed to have shot the Kleins while they were sleeping in their bed weeks before they were found. Because of their friendship, Todd, who Sheriff Grady Judd referred to as a cold-blooded killer, had access to the couple's property. He broke in without anybody knowing and got the job done. Police believe he may have killed the couple because they allegedly owed him $30,000. Authorities claim that after the shooting, Jackson asked 19-year-old Larry James Waters Jr., a man dating his stepdaughter, for help. He helped the man push the Kleins' bodies outside after removing an air conditioner from the bedroom window. The 2 victims were then moved with the help of a furniture dolly, after which they were left to rot. The cover-up was revealed when 19-year-old Amberlynn Nicole Nichols, Jackson's stepdaughter, tried selling Raymond Klein's truck for $200. She was telling potential buyers that the owner had been killed and they desperately needed to get rid of the vehicle. Not only did Amberlynn tell the authorities that she was the killer's stepdaughter, but she led them straight to the swamp where the Kleins' bodies were dumped. Jackson was sentenced to life in prison, while both Nichols and Waters Jr. were arrested for charges of accessory and failing to report a death. Number 5. Father-son bond. In December 2020, a man lost his life thanks to the joint efforts of a man and his stepson. 24-year-old Josh Fowler was visiting a home in the 6800 block of Loop 1604 East when he was suddenly killed by a gunshot, and according to the arrest warrant, a witness saw him rush out of the house right as a car pulled up to him with 3 suspects in it. 61-year-old Williams Blankenship and 25-year-old Lane Wootan were both inside the vehicle, and they were fully armed with personal handguns. Wootan even had a rifle, while Blankenship held his guns in a holster. He also had 2 clubs in his hands. Fowler and Wootan then got into a fight in the backyard, and sometime during it, Williams handed one of the clubs to his stepson so he could use it against Fowler. According to what witnesses told the investigators, gunshots were then heard. One of them apparently sounded like a rifle, while the other was from a handgun. Both of these shots rang out at the same time, after which Josh fell to the ground in pain, screaming for help. The witness tried to help Fowler, but Williams's wife, Jennifer Blankenship, threatened him in case he tried calling the police. After the culprits left the scene, Fowler was rushed to the hospital, where he was eventually pronounced dead. Shortly afterward, all 3 of the suspects were convicted of murder, and according to trial testimony, Fowler and a companion got into another fight with Josh earlier that day. He returned to face his opponent along with his mother Jennifer and stepfather Williams. In October 2022, a jury took only 3.5 hours to declare Wootan and Blankenship responsible for the deadly shooting of Josh Fowler. Williams Blankenship was handed a 10-year sentence for the killing, while Lane Wootan was given a 22-year prison term. After the completion of half of their terms, both men will be eligible for parole. If you ask us, these guys got off easy. Number 4. A haphazard family. In February 2017, a Ku Klux Klan leader was shot. It was later discovered that the murder was ironically carried out by his wife and stepson, who worked together hand in hand. 44-year-old Melissa Ann Ancona and her 25-year-old son, Paul Edward Jenkinson Jr., were both accused of first-degree murder, interfering with physical evidence and abandoning a corpse in regards to Melissa's husband's murder. According to a probable cause statement, 51-year-old Frank Ancona was shot and killed on a Thursday in February at night while he slept peacefully at his home in Leadwood, Missouri, which is located about 70 miles south of St. Louis. According to Detective Matt Wampler of the St. Francis County Sheriff's Office, after the murder, Ancona's body was driven about 20 miles from Leadwood in Jenkinson's car to a secluded spot not far from Belgrade, Missouri. On the following Saturday, a family who was having fun fishing in the Big River discovered the body. Ancona died from a gunshot wound to the head, according to an autopsy performed the next day. The body was discovered about 3 days after Ancona was allegedly killed in his home, since he was reported missing a day after his death by his boss at work. Upon further investigation, the detectives realized that his safe had been broken into and everything in it was gone. Many of his guns were taken as well. Ancona's car was found abandoned on a service road near Potosi, which was about 30 miles away from where his body was later found, and next to his abandoned car was evidence of a large burn pile. Police said that during their investigation of Ancona's property, they discovered plenty of blood in the master bedroom. Eventually, Melissa told police officers that her son Jenkinson had murdered Ancona while he was sleeping. She also tried to hide evidence and openly claimed that she didn't file a police report. Both Melissa and Paul have since been charged with Ancona's murder and are currently jailed for life without parole. Number 3. Video game frenzy. On February 12, 2012, A man killed his stepson because he was too noisy while playing video games. 48-year-old Eric Brandon is a Georgia man who apparently murdered 16-year-old Alex Cossa, his stepson that used to live with him. According to sources, he shot at the teenager 3 times on a Sunday afternoon. 2 of the bullets pierced through the teen's chest and 1 in the body. This happened after Brandon started a heated argument and complained about Alex's video games being too loud. At the time of the shooting, Alex was playing with a friend whose identity was not revealed at the family home in Alpharetta. At the time the argument broke out, the friend wasn't in the room, but he could still hear Brandon yelling at Alex to be quiet. The noise continued despite the stepdad's demands, so he shot his stepson while his friend was making snacks in the other room. Eric Brandon then called 911 and confessed that he had shot and killed his son. When police got there, they realized that the man's wife, Patricia, was out getting groceries at the time. Luckily, he surrendered without resisting in any shape or form, but even after that, he seemed to have no remorse. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution confirmed that when the culprit was being put into the police car, he said that he hoped the boy hadn't survived. Brandon had many unresolved feelings about his teenage stepson, as one of his Facebook posts from 3 days before the shooting talked about his homeless teen and bills had been keeping him up at night. He felt like he had no spirit left in him to go on. On top of that, he had also been undergoing chemotherapy for cancer treatment. Just one night before the murder, Brandon posted again on his Facebook that he was losing his patience because of something his son did. Before the crime, he had never been convicted of anything, and there had been no disturbances reported at the family's house. In December 2013, the Georgia jury took only 25 minutes to reach a verdict for the conviction, and Brandon was sentenced to life in prison, with an additional 5 years on the charges of murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm. Number 2. Faulty cover-up. On December 1st, 2018, a woman was stabbed in her own car. At first, police believed a panhandler committed the crime, but later on, the murderers turned out to be the woman's husband and stepdaughter. 54-year-old Jacqueline Smith was driving on Valley Street in Baltimore when she noticed that a woman was holding up a sign that read, "Please help me feed my baby." The woman was also carrying a baby, and as Smith stopped to give her some money, a man reached his hand into the car and took her wallet before stabbing her to death and escaping on foot. Later on, Jacqueline died at a hospital. 52-year-old Keith Smith, her husband from Aberdeen, as well as 28-year-old Valeria Smith, her stepdaughter, were both present the night Jackie was killed. They made up a story to tell the authorities, who failed to believe them as the investigation went on, and what they said wasn't making sense. The police soon realized that the murder was staged by Smith's family members, and they tried to disguise it under the umbrella of an act of random violence. Coincidentally, citizens were already fearful after similar violent cases happened in the city. This is probably why Keith and Valeria thought their plan would work out in the end. The acting Baltimore police commissioner at the time, Michael Harrison, confirmed that Mr. Smith was going to leave Maryland, which they quickly prevented. He was arrested by Texas State Police in March 2019 early on a Sunday morning. But the authorities refused to discuss the father-daughter duo's motive behind the killing. The only thing they confirmed was the fact that a panhandler was definitely not the killer. Both suspects were charged the next day in Cameron County, Texas Magistrates Court, and each of them were held without the option of bail. Keith was charged with first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Valeria got away with a lighter sentence of 5 years in prison, since she pleaded guilty to acting as an accessory and testified against her own father. Number 1. Repaying favor. On November 14th, 2004, a man was killed in his bed just a few months after his stepdaughter moved in. She was ultimately responsible for his slow, painful death. In May 2004, with $4,500 from his $43,000 life insurance payout, 62-year-old James Croxton bailed his 39-year-old stepdaughter, Judy Naylor, out of jail. She was charged with attempted first-degree murder, conspiracy, larceny of a firearm, and fraud. For these crimes, she was sentenced to 16 to 20 years in prison. But in November 2004, about 6 months after she got back home, Judy called 911 saying that Croxton was unresponsive in his bed, and after the arrival of paramedics, they declared him dead on the scene. Just an hour after James passed, Cumberland County Sheriff's Office got a call from Judy's stepmom, Donna Naylor, who told them that if her husband was dead, Judy was probably behind it. After that, authorities looked at James's home like a crime scene. Research about death investigations and autopsies were discovered with sample wills and what seemed to be someone trying to replicate James's signature on tracing paper. Judy wrote letters to her brother Kenneth while he was in jail, where she revealed her desire to kill her stepdad so that she could get her mother's insurance money. Donna Naylor provided the investigators with all of the letters. Kenneth was told that she would be using chemicals. She told him how, in a few months, James would be a goner. Autopsies confirmed a fatally toxic amount of chloroform in the victim's body at the time of his death. In April 2007, Judy Naylor MacPhail was sentenced to life in prison after being found guilty of Croxton's first-degree murder. Thanks for watching. Which one of these step-family crimes do you think was the craziest? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger. Bye for now.